I am 27 years old. I live alone in a small apartment in my city. Last night, I was working late on a big project. I felt safe inside my home. I did not expect the night to go wrong. It was around 2 in the morning when I first heard a soft clicking sound in the hall. I paused and tried to listen, but it stopped as soon as I moved my head. I sat back and focused on my work again, telling myself it was nothing more than old pipes settling. After a few minutes, I heard it again, steady and slow, like someone tapping on the wall. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the closed door. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I whispered to myself that it had to be my mind playing tricks. As I tried to go back to typing, the sound changed into slow, heavy knocks at my door. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keys, as the echoes repeated. The pattern felt deliberate, like someone counting steps outside my home. My stomach dropped as I realized the noise was not the pipes. I stared at the door handle, thinking someone was out there. My heart raced as the knocks grew louder and more urgent. I swallowed hard and whispered, "Who's there?" But only silence answered me. I could feel my skin crawl at the thought of someone outside. I shook my head and stood up to check the peephole, but I saw only darkness. My laptop screen blinked and jumped, then opened a window I did not click. It showed a black and white video feed from a small camera down the hall. The view was of my door and the hallway outside. A tall, shadowy figure stood just beyond my door, its shape unclear. I gasped and slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking so badly I could not type. I did not know where that camera came from or who set it up. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed my phone and called building management with shaking hands. The person on the line said no one reported any cameras or odd noises in the building. I pressed them, but they just told me to lock my door and go back to bed. I checked every window and door, pushing and pulling on each lock. Everything felt tight and secure, but I could not shake the feeling that someone was testing me. I sat back at my desk and stared at the door, waiting for the next sound. The silence pressed on me like a heavy weight. The night grew darker and quieter, but I felt every second stretch like an hour. My breathing slowed, and I tried to calm my racing heart. But then I heard the clicking again, this time softer and faster, like someone tapping their fingers. My mind raced with images of a stranger hiding just outside my door. I thought of every horror story I had ever heard about home invasions. I wondered if I was alone, or watched by eyes I could not see. My skin crawled as I waited for something to happen. I felt trapped inside my own home all alone. Suddenly, the door shook with a loud bang that rattled every bone in my body. I jumped out of my chair, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The knocks turned into wild pounding, like fists slamming against wood. I raced to the door and pressed my ear against it, trying to hear a voice. All I heard was heavy breathing and the floor creaking under unseen weight. My hand shook as I reached for the lock, but the handle twisted under pressure. I slammed my shoulder against the door and it cracked open an inch. A dark shape filled the gap before I yanked the door shut and bolted it. I stayed crouched behind my desk for a long time, too scared to move. My hands trembled and my legs felt weak. I kept listening for any sound, but the hallway stayed quiet. I called the police, but when they came, they found no one. They looked in the camera feed and saw only an empty hallway. I tried to show them the video on my laptop, but the file had disappeared. I checked again and found no trace of that feed. No one could explain where it went or who put the camera there. I moved into a friend's place the next day. I still wake up at night, afraid of every sound. My apartment is empty now, but I can't go back. I do not know what wanted me that night, but I will never forget the fear. I still jump at the smallest creak in a quiet room. I lived alone in a modest house with creaky floors and old furniture that had seen better days. I liked the simple life, and I believed I was safe in my little world. One cold, stormy night, I was lying in bed trying to sleep while rain pounded against the window. I had just drifted off when a sharp knock at the front door jolted me awake. At first, I assumed it was a prank, maybe a trick by a friend trying to scare me. But the knock did not stop. It came again and again, slow and steady, echoing through the empty halls of my house. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding, as I tried to understand what was happening. I listened closely. The knock was precise, like someone had practiced it. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and saw several missed calls from an unknown number. Every call came at the same time as a knock. My mind raced, and I began to feel a deep unease that I had never known before. I forced myself out of bed and walked through the dark hall towards the front door. The floor creaked under my weight, and every sound made me jump. The hallway was dimly lit by a single bulb, and the long shadows it cast made the place feel even more empty and lonely. I reached the door and looked through the peephole, but all I could see was the stormy night outside, with rain dripping from the eaves and wind shaking the windows. After a moment, I almost laughed at myself, thinking it was just my imagination. But then I heard soft footsteps behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. The feeling of being watched crept over me like a cold hand. I stood there for a long moment, my eyes scanning every dark corner, but I saw nothing. Yet the unease did not go away. I closed the door and returned to the living room, trying to steady my breathing. I sat down on the old sofa, the one that had always been my comfort, but now it felt like a trap. The knocks had stopped, but I could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Every little sound, the ticking of the clock, the creak of the wood, even the wind outside, seemed to whisper warnings. As minutes turned to what felt like hours, I began to hear more strange sounds. There were soft whispers that I could not understand, and sometimes I thought I heard someone moving around in the next room. At one point, I even thought I saw a shadow move quickly across the wall. I told myself it was just the storm playing tricks on my mind, but my heart told me otherwise. I decided to call a friend for some comfort. I dialed a number, but there was no answer, only the heavy sound of static. Panic rose in my chest as I realized that I was completely alone with this strange, unseen presence. I thought about calling the police, but fear held me back. What if this was not a random act, but a planned intrusion by someone who knew my every move? I sat there, frozen, until a sudden loud crash from upstairs broke the silence. I jumped up, nearly knocking over a lamp. The crash was followed by more sounds, like heavy footsteps in the attic. I could not tell if it was real or just my mind playing tricks on me. My heart was pounding so hard that I thought it would burst. I decided to hide in the kitchen, hoping that if someone was in my house, they would not find me there. I stayed in the kitchen for what seemed like hours, every sound making me jump. When I finally mustered the courage to move, I crept back into the living room. The house was silent again, but the memory of the knocking, the missed calls, and the crash made me feel unsafe. I sat down and tried to calm myself, but the fear had taken root deep inside me. Even now, when I think back on that night, I can still hear the rhythmic knocking at the door and feel the cold dread that filled every room. I do not know who or what was there, and I do not know if they will come back. But one thing is clear. That night changed me forever. I learned that even in the safety of my own home, fear can find you, and nothing is ever truly safe. I lived in a quiet, simple house. It was a normal home with a small yard and plain walls. I had always felt safe here. That night, everything felt off. It started when I went to check the back door. I always lock it before bed, but when I looked, I saw it was slightly open. I could not remember leaving it like that. My heart thumped hard. I closed and locked it again, hoping it was just my mistake. I told myself not to worry, but my mind would not let me rest. Soon after, I sat in my living room and tried to watch TV to calm down. The room was dim and empty, and the sound of the wind outside made the house seem even quieter. Then I heard soft sounds in the hallway. It was hard to tell what they were at first. I thought maybe the house was just settling. But as I listened, I realized the sounds came in an odd pattern, like slow footsteps pacing across the wood floor. I could not shake off the feeling that I was not alone. I got up and walked down the hall to see if I could find where the sound was coming from. The hall was dark, and the only light came from a small lamp by the stairs. I saw nothing unusual, only shadows that danced on the walls. Yet every step I took made me feel like someone was behind me. I kept looking over my shoulder, but no one was there. I went back to my room to try and think clearly. I remembered that I had locked all the doors and windows, but now I saw muddy footprints near the window I hardly ever used. The prints were small and led away from the window. They did not match my own shoes. I picked up my phone and saw a security alert notification. I never set off any alarms, so this was strange too. I tried to call my parents, but there was no answer. My hands shook as I tried to understand what was happening. I decided to check the old surveillance recordings on my computer. I had set them up a long time ago, just in case, but I never really used them. I played the recordings from earlier that night. At first, nothing seemed wrong. But then, I saw a dark figure near the window. The figure moved slowly, almost hidden by the shadows, and then disappeared. I watched again and again, trying to be sure it was real. My stomach churned as I saw the figure move away, leaving nothing behind but a feeling of dread. At that point, the sounds grew louder. The slow, heavy footsteps from the hallway became more clear. I grabbed a flashlight and crept out of my room. My heart pounded as I moved down the hall, each step filled with fear. I peered around every corner. The house was empty, yet I felt the presence of someone there. Every shadow seemed to hide a watcher. I returned to the living room and checked every door and window again. They were all locked except that window with the muddy prints. I moved closer to that window and looked out into the darkness. I could see the faint glow of streetlights in the distance, but nothing else. A chill ran down my spine when I thought that someone had been in my home without me knowing. I felt trapped, alone, and scared. I sat down on the cold floor and listened to every sound. The creak of the house, the hum of the wind, even my own breathing sounded too loud in the silence. I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was as if the house itself had turned against me, holding secrets in every corner. I thought about calling the police, but fear held me back. I wondered if someone had done this on purpose. Had someone known I was home alone? The thought made my skin crawl. I decided to re-watch the recordings once more. That time, I saw the dark figure closer to the window, almost as if it was waiting for me to notice. I felt a deep terror that made my legs weak. I do not know how long I sat there, paralyzed by fear, until the sounds finally stopped. The night grew silent, but my mind kept racing. I locked the window and turned off the lights, trying to force myself to sleep. I still hear the echo of those slow footsteps and see the muddy prints in my mind. I know I was not just imagining things. Something was there, something that broke into my safe space and left only fear behind. I will never forget that night. The feeling of being invaded in my own home still makes me shudder. Even now, I wonder if that dark figure is still out there, waiting for another chance to come back. I keep my locks tight and my eyes open, but I know that the terror of that night will always be with me.